Okay, Guru Nation. Now, before I really get into this, I'm gonna go on a long, deep dive with Biotech Scanner after Aquestive Therapeutics earnings in a few weeks. And we're gonna also throw in some Iovance as well because their earnings are around the same time. And we're gonna go deep dive on this. But I wanted to do an analysis, a bull and bear case analysis of my favorite biotech as of late, meaning as of the last 2, 3 years. Iova might be taking that throne pretty soon, but Aquestive's near and dear to my heart. If you've been following me since the beginning, this is not financial advice, but the stock has done well. The FDA had said they do not need an AdCom, but their competitor, ARS Pharma, there's a lot of drama going on surrounding a citizen's petition, which aims to block or delay approval. And they do have some scientific basis because if you're a competitor, you need to prove you have a valid scientific basis for filing this petition. Otherwise, I think the FDA's responsibility is to send this to the FTC for unfair trade practices, something like that. But we got to remember why we love this company in the first place, Aquestive. The problem with most people is they are not compliant. Like if you know you have an allergy, you're supposed to carry an EpiPen around with you. Well, Aquestive has made a oral epinephrine Listerine strip that goes on the back of your phone. I've done deep dives on this company on my channel, so check it out. Also on my X, as well as Biotech Scanner. But there is a bull and bear case scenario. The bull, the optimistic, is this is going to reduce deaths, reduce unnecessary deaths because of the compliance issue. Nobody leaves their house without their phone. If you forget your phone, you're coming back for it. And that's where the Listerine strip are supposed to be, or in your wallet, or in your purse for females. And then, or males, nothing wrong with that. Uh, as opposed to EpiPens, right? If you leave it, most people just, if they forget it, they just leave it. And a lot of people also don't renew their EpiPens when they expire. So there is bull and bear case analysis. The citizens petition effectively gives us the worst case scenario, which I want to save you some time. So the worst case scenario, in my opinion, would be obviously a complete response letter from the FDA rejects the Anaphylm, or they would do like a black box warning. Now, I don't think that is the likely scenario, but unfortunately, this citizen petition will be looked at by the FDA. The only reason ARS, I believe the only reason ARS filed it, they are the competitor with the Neffy nasal spray for epinephrine. The only reason they didn't file this earlier was because, in my opinion, again, the FDA said they had enough data from Aquestive and they didn't need the AdCom committee meeting, which surprised me. It surprised most of us because of the issues. There are some issues on the second dosing with the Anaphylm where the concentration is pretty high, although there were no adverse events in the study. But this is like the basis for the petition overview. So the PDUFA date for Anaphylm is supposed to be January 31st, 2026. That is when we will find out from the FDA if the drug will be approved or rejected. On September 22nd, so when the AdCom, like a week before, the FDA told Aquestive you don't need an AdCom committee meeting, and then on September 22nd, ARS filed a 16-page citizens petition calling for more studies on the safety, usability, and PK in real-world scenarios like angioedema or repeat dosing at 5 minutes. Now, interestingly enough, Neffy, in their own study, did not do 5 minute PK intervals. They did 10 minutes. But they cite risks like the diastolic blood pressure spikes, which were 5 to 10 units, uh, which is unusual for epinephrine because that's supposed to lower the diastolic and raise the systolic. And then in the case of Anaphylm, it kind of does both. Overexposure from the 12 milligram pro drug dose. This is what ARS is saying. Now, the reaction, it didn't matter. AQST dipped initially, but recovered 4.6% the very next day. And today it's around $7, just under $7. The bear case, like I said, the key point lies around repeat dosing risks. So the Cmax concentration was well in line on the first dose and on the second dose. But on the first dose, it was well in line with the area under the curve. And on the first dose of Anaphylm, it was right in line with EpiPen. On the second dose, the PK second dose Cmax was 2.3 times higher than the benchmark, which is 2 EpiPens. And there was no 5-minute study, which is the guideline standard, which I gotta mention, ARS did not do either. And even though they got a complete response letter the first time, not because of this, but they did get a complete response letter because they didn't do it in a real world scenario with allergy-like symptoms. Uh, they did a 10-minute PK interval, and they're suggesting that Anaphylm does 5-minute dosing, which is hypocritical because they didn't even do that themselves. The atypical diastolic spike, they're arguing, they being ARS, is possibly from prodrug metabolites, which impair the B2 receptors. They're saying this could undermine efficacy in bronchodilation or raise cardiovascular risks, especially for comorbid patients excluded from trials. Now, it's important to know I work in clinical research. I've ran research sites for 20 years. Unless it's a cardiology study, you don't allow, it's always an exclusionary for people with acute cardiovascular risks or chronic even cardiovascular risks to be included in studies. They'll even screen fail them at screening visits based on their ECGs and QTC intervals and things like that. So I don't think it would be ethical to enroll people with cardiovascular risks into this study, and no one else had to do it either. So you can argue the same thing, whether it's systolic or diastolic, an increase from epinephrine in either is a risk. So I'm not buying the DBP spike that much. My main concern is on their repeat dosing. However, I think the bull case, which I'm going to get to right now, and there's also some risk, like what happens if they vomit, and what happens, if severe angioedema, even though AQST did a mild angioedema oral allergen study, the severe angioedema study would be unethical to do as well. So they did the most real world possible study they could have done. If you've got severe angioedema, the argument is it worked on the mild, it should work on the severe because the surface area of the skin is actually even bigger. But again, the FDA is going to have to look at that. I'm surprised they did not do the AdCom. That means they saw enough from the data, in my opinion, to where they're okay with just going straight to PDUFA. However, with a petition like this, there could be a 3 to 6 month delay. I wouldn't be surprised necessarily. I still think that's unlikely, but if I do see it, and now if you see it, you shouldn't be surprised. I don't think there's going to be a complete response letter requiring new trials, which would delay it by another year or so. Um, and a warning letter maybe for cardiovascular risks, but I don't see that because there were no adverse events in the actual study they did. None of those patients with the diastolic spike of which, by the way, the spike was only 5 to 10 points. So the bull case, which is my case, is this is lawfare. And there's a history of lawfare in this instance with citizens petitions, and it's a classic competitor fearing the market share loss. So FDA denies 85% of these things, these citizen petitions. They deny 85% of them without PDUFA impact. Similar tactics rarely block ARS filing post no AdCom signals desperation. They waited till after the AdCom was announced. So if they were truly concerned about patients, they would have done it before. If they were truly confident, I think, in this petition, they would have done it before the AdCom. Why not do it as soon as AQST submitted the NDA and then the FDA accepted the the PDUFA filing? So the strengths are there. AQST's PK, pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic brackets the injectors perfectly. The diastolic spike is transient, no adverse events. The oral allergen study addressed the mucosal issues with it angioedema, even though it's not severe. You can't do severe, it's unethical. No 5-minute requirement was per the FDA meeting. Neffy used 10 minutes, and the FDA meeting said it's not required to do the 5-minute requirement for the PK post-dose PK. Approval will unlock, this will kill the competition. That's why I love this. It's starting to get advocacy groups interested. This company was featured on Jim Cramer's Mad Money. He's a fan. The portability factor, Edge's Neffy, the fact that they have a 50-person sales force, they already target 80% coverage in 6 months, and they got cash runway till 2027. I forecast this as a low risk. If you've made some profits on any company, by the way, it doesn't hurt to take some profits off the table. I'm still extremely bullish. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of delay, but depending on how far it dips, I might actually use it as a buyback opportunity. Not not financial advice, by the way. Um, I think this is a desperation move. I think the do your own research. I think the price right now is probably where it's going to be. If it wasn't for this petition, I think it would be closer to 10. It might still push $10 by December while we're waiting for the PDUFA. And remember, the FDA can reject this thing, could reject the citizens' petition anytime between now and then. So, but also don't be surprised for any potential delay. This is biotech. If you wanted something certain, go invest in Eli Lilly. Maybe that's not even that certain. Go invest in like big companies. But if you like the volatility, you like the action, you do the research, you see the potential action here, go for it. This is the risk, and you got to do your own due diligence as well. Don't just listen to me. Go do it yourself. Like, subscribe, comment, share. I'm still bullish for sure. Bye bye.